This day's AF Trains video focuses on the rebuild of an AC Gilbert American Flyer 720A switch pair with remote control that were in the product line from 1949 to 1956. According to Doyle, these are 1951 Type 1, distinguished by the binding post to secure the controller, here, leads to the turnouts. Note the color plastic rings around each post. The build date on at least this one was June of 1953. On my layout, I have 7 remote control switches. They are monitored and controlled by these. A dual-size rubber bulb extraction tool enhances the removal and installation of 432 bulbs if the control box is not removed first. We're going to take a look at that a little bit later. One end of the bulb extraction tool is used for 432 bulbs and the other one for standard 1447, 1449s, and so forth. And that rubber extraction tool is here. There's the large end for the 432s, the small end for the 1447s, 1449s, and so forth. A very, very handy tool, especially for these if you're not going to remove this box first. As you know, these vintage painted bulbs that were in these as they were delivered from AC Gilbert produce excessive heat. They can burn your hand or damage the surrounding control box. 2 of these control boxes have been damaged strictly by heat. And they are here. You can see the warping between the bulbs, warping here between the bulbs. And this one, I had a very difficult time even extracting the bulb from either of these, because they had warped so tightly around the bulb. So those took a little bit of work to remove. Now I have since replaced the vintage bulbs with 432 green and red LED replacements that are very cool and very long lasting, and I highly recommend them. In addition to remote control switches, my layout uses 5 manual switches in convenient and easy to access locations, such as this one, which is within, say, 12 inches of the edge of the table. 4 of these switches, such as the one you see here, are the 26770 switches sold from 1959 and in the inventory until 1964. A sliding switch down here between the tracks is not present, but regular and 2 train markings are present. Now I have 4 of these, but I have one that actually has the switch, which means I probably cannibalized it and built it from a variety of switches. One of the manual switches that you see here is a 722 made from 1946 to 1951. It's on the other side of this locomotive. Apologize for the not having a really good angle on this. It has the red and green flags that indicate the turnout position, plus a switch for the regular and 2 train opposition. The flags, like you see here, are available, and I was able to replace those on this switch. All the switches on my layout have in common, with degrees of variation, 3 things. They were completely and thoroughly disassembled and rebuilt to include cleaning and polishing, even of the rail heads, and parts replaced as were needed. The frog tips, or points, 4 of them, 2 on the narrow end, 2 on the wide end, were misaligned and required adjustment. And then there was voluntary frog movement when the trains passed over. While the coil was available through the remote control to move the frog, trains repositioned them, and that of course is not desirable. Now you can see on this one, and I'm just going to point it out here because I'm going to point it out later in the rebuild again, you'll see a piece of mylar under this end, the narrow end of the frog. Sometimes I have to put them here, other times I have to put them here. What that piece of mylar does is provide enough lubrication, you might say, and steadiness to allow the coil to move the frog, but the frog not to move because of the trains. This particular switch, and we'll revisit that later, this particular switch probably needed more work done on these points than any other, but they all had to some degree of it. This one right here, for example, extended well beyond the edge of this rail, which meant that as the trains were traveling in this direction, they were literally colliding with the brunt end, the square end of that particular rail on the frog. Same thing down here. Sometimes the points were too high. I had to file them down. And sometimes this frog has been too high. And you'll notice that it extends beyond this rail, but that's okay, which means it aligns really good with this one. I believe I actually polished this one down or trimmed it down. This one I did both down and on the inside. But that only comes with experience in running all your trains over this, as I did, to find out what will move across these and what will not.